Hello Internet, welcome to my second video where I will be showing you how to recover a failed print on an FDM printer using only Notepad. Now, I don't want to make this a long drawn out video on how 3D printers work. There are plenty of those videos out on the internet already. I just want to keep it straightforward for this episode. I use a Creality Ender 3 printer, which is an FDM printer. And without going into too many details, that means basically if our print has failed, then we're going to have a certain amount of missing plastic on top of the model that is already printed. Now, if it fails really early in the print, you could probably just scrap it and start all over again. But if you're a couple hours into a print and you don't want to waste that time and material, you can do this. We can find out the layer height that it failed at, and we can hack the G code to continue printing on top of it. So the first thing that we need to do is determine the layer height of the failure on the model. Now, generally, we got to measure that. There's a couple ways of doing that. So if your machine didn't lose power and it still has calibration on its XYZ coordinates, then it's actually quite simple to move the nozzle down to the top layer and read the coordinates on your z-axis and go from there. If your machine did lose power, as is the case with what I have here, then it may take more effort to measure. If your printer has a working resume function, you can certainly use that and it will cut out all of this work for you. My printer is supposed to have a resume function, but it no longer functions. But if you can't do a simple resume, then you're going to have to move forward with the measuring process. So there's an easy way, like I said earlier, and a more difficult way to measure. The first way, the easy way, is measuring with the print head. This can also be a potentially dangerous method if you accidentally give the wrong commands. Your nozzle might end up trying to drive through a part of plastic. So first you need to find out if your printer still has valid XYZ coordinates. If it's lost power and come back on and you see all zeros, even though the print head is halfway up or however far up, obviously the coordinates are not going to work for you. So you're going to have to home the machine, and this can be a tricky process. You have to make sure that neither your nozzle nor your x-axis rail are going to run into the parts that you have. This is a point where it would be good to know ahead of time how high up your x-axis rail sits when the printer is homed. Mine happens at 30 millimeters up, which means I have no issue with just hitting the home, auto home, on this current problem that I have. Alright, so now that we got everything kind of preheated, we got the nozzle rehomed, we can move First of all, nozzle up. Move it up a good 10 millimeters. 20 even. Okay. 17. Let's move it really slowly now. So 15.1 roughly. Can I zoom in? And as you see, there's still a gap there. So if I move the Z further down, I think that looks like that's 14.5. That's at least one of the measurements that came up. Now, let's move our Y and see what happens. Now, if it's digging through a little bit, that might be a sign that we're on a layer, like the very layer that died when it was printing. Because depending on at what point the print was at, it'll either be like near the start of a layer or near the end of a layer or halfway through. So like that guy right there, if I were to print down at this height, this guy's going to get hit. So I think I may have to try and just go up one layer. The other option, which is more involved and requires calipers or another similarly calibrated measuring device, is to do it manually and just use the calipers and measure at as many different spots as accurately as you can. Take the average of those and assume that to be your failed layer height. And after you get your measurement that you're satisfied with, you take that knowledge with you and you take your G-code out of the printer, whatever it was you used to print, and you bring it over to the computer. And you open it up, but here's how you open it. You're going to right click on your G-code and you're going to open it with Notepad. This opens it just as a pure text file, completely editable, And this is where the potentially daunting part comes. So you're going to have to search in here, and it's quite easy in Notepad to just hit Control F and do a search, and you can search for your layer height. Mine happened to be layer height of Z15. So I search for Z15 and it gives me a layer, and you can see from my screenshots here that there's a little bit of a drop at the very start of the print before it picks up again, that 14.9. So we're going to take everything from there all the way up to the top of the text file, almost all the way, and we're going to cut that out. So holding shift and scrolling down, you'll see what I mean by it's not just a text file, it's a big text file. So if you're just doing this, like all of these, until you see a Z movement, that's all one layer. So I think we saw one Z movement scroll by. There it is. Layer -1 raft. We're still on the raft. We haven't even made it to the actual part yet. So in order to save you all that trouble, what we can do is all this bit at the top. Some of these are codes that you want to leave in there. Some of them are not required, but what we can do if we're worried about it, we don't want to get into it, is we can just cut it all out for now, and we can Control F, and we can just go to our Z15, this gap that we made here, hold shift again and go page up. And at the very least, page up is faster than an arrow. And by going by cutting out that section at the front, we don't have to worry about accidentally deleting it. I knew I should have brought those chips. Alright, so you just copy and paste in that starter. Now, some of these you'll want to keep, some of these you'll want to get rid of, particularly if you don't have the clearance to allow your printer to go to its 000 home point. If your part is too big, like it really sticks out to the edge, and when your printer comes to the end and comes down, it's gonna crunch it. You have to avoid that, and in order to do so, you would want to get rid of the auto homing commands in here. So the G28 for X, Y, and Z here, those G28 commands you're going to want to move, or get rid of. But other than that, for me, I don't have to worry about it. So auto homing it allows it to reconfirm its position. Depending on your printer, you might not be able to start the print without auto homing. This next part is moving the nozzle up to 15 millimeters. So this part you could get rid of, or you can keep it. I would say it would be best to just switch it to your printing height here, or even possibly above your printing height. Because this is basically the starting point before it starts extruding the walls. You can see there the extrusion number. So another fun note, if you ever want to change what the printer says at any point, you just change the M117 command. So let's just change it to Pre-DND 3D, and let's see how that turns out on the screen. I'm not sure about putting these dashes here. It's the first time I've tried that. An important thing to keep in mind is to make sure it actually saves as a G code. To do that, you go to File and you save it as, and you can just go All Documents and you go .G code, just like that, and that will save it. Instead of a .text file, it will become a .G code file. Now I've already got one saved, but as you see, there it is right there. And that's the difference. When you save it as .G code, it becomes something that your printer will open. When it's the .text, the printer won't look at it, which is silly because it's, like I said, the same code. So it's doing its auto home, and then you go back up again. Start printing at the layer that we figured we were at. And there she goes. There it is. It doesn't seem to be doing too bad. We'll see how the over extrusion looks up there. But overall, it's a pretty decent turnout for a failed print. There's a little bit of underexposing on some of these parts. Let's take it off there and see how it. Let's see how nicely it comes off. Oh yeah, that is satisfying. See if you can hear that. They just peeled right off. This one just came off on its own. That is lovely. That'll be fine. And the one spot where it's stuck is this spot here where the raft lifted. You can see the deformation caused by the lifting on the raft. Some of you may be wondering maybe if this part in particular is going to be weak. Probably. This one here looks like it is lacking in materials. I can get my nail in there. So this is how strong it is. And as you can see, I don't have very much infill. It's usually not required that much. I think I'm going to be cheap and glue that back together. And thank you all for watching this far. I hope to see you on the next video.